Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Built in California series where we're going to be shining a light on some amazing founders, really changing the way we do business, not only today, but in the future as well. This team, these sets of co-founders, is Chai and Diz. They are the co-founders of Liquidinate, an amazing startup based in California. Welcome to the show, Chai and Diz.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Cool, man.
Matt.
So, Diz, let's start with you. You're up on screen for everybody. Why don't you give us the backstory to Liquidinate? Where does this story begin?
Yeah, so we started Liquid Donate in November of last year and incorporated in February of this year. And what our product does is that we work with retail stores to seamlessly donate all of their unsellable goods to nonprofits around the country. Chai and I previously worked together at Postmates. I was the 15th employee there, helped build customer service, sales, business development, helped to open the first revenue stream for the company, and then eventually led our social impact team and program that we were doing there, where Chai and I built a number of tech for good products that were really based in food security and disaster relief work. So we both are just passionate about building products that are able to help people while at the same time driving value for each operation that we're supporting. So with Liquid Donate, it's really derived from the work that we did on food security and making sure that we were moving excess food around for people who needed it. And now we've moved on to doing that for retail stores and their returns, which over 80% of end up in the landfill.
Yes, well, this is a great point of departure. So unpack that for us. So why do so many returns wind up in landfill sites? It almost doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, well, if you buy something from me, I would hope that if it was returned to me, I could sell it to someone else rather than just lose the margin on that and, and then worst of all, put it into a landfill.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is like what the New York Times calls the dark side of retail. And what happens is when an item is returned, which the National Retail Federation says that about 16%, 1/6, of all items that are purchased are returned. So 16% of those items that are returned, of those, 80% go straight to landfill and 20% end up in liquidation of some kind. And both of those things cost money for the company. For the 16% of goods, the ones that are able to be resold, that's great. It depends on the business on how many of those can actually go back on the shelf. But if the tag is missing, the box is dented, if it's something that the store has just deemed unhygienic to resell or reuse for whatever reason, they go straight into the reverse logistics flow after they've already done the refund for the item. So then 80% will end up at a landfill, which there's obviously costs for emissions, for gas in the trucking, all of those things to get the items to the landfill. And then sometimes there's even a landfill fee. And then if the company's buying carbon offsets for that landfill diversion as well, that's an additional cost that they're spending on that. And then the liquidation flow is also fraught with inefficiency. They'll take the item and have it loaded onto a truck. Let's say the retail store was in California and the distribution center that's handling that liquidation sale, those big pallets of just stuff that people end up with, those are, sometimes in Indiana. So the item will be driven from California to Indiana, palletized, and then someone in Florida will buy the pallet, gets driven to Florida just for someone to sell it on eBay for it to end up back in California. So super inefficient process there as well. But yeah, for a lot of retailers, it's actually more cost effective for them to just dump the item than it is for them to put it back on the shelf or to do anything else with it.
Yeah, which is a sad story, right? And a situation.
Yeah, it's awful. It's something that a lot of people don't know about and something that we're trying to solve for before it gets any worse.
Uh-huh. So, Chai, let's bring you back into the conversation here. So, how did you and I know Diz, you touched on it, but walk us through like how you guys first met, and how you guys decided, okay, cool. Well, this is a problem we actually care about. I mean, you could have you've solved other problems before, like why this one, why now? So, Chai, what are your views on that?
Sure. A little bit about our background is that Diz and I worked together at Postmates. Postmates is a food delivery app which eventually got bought by Uber. And at Postmates, I was an engineer building customer or consumer facing products. And this was running the social impact org at Postmates and everything to do with volunteering and sustainability and giving back to the society. So she had all these ideas about how we could use tech for good. And since Postmates was a food delivery app, most of those ideas were around salvaging food waste because restaurants have a lot of food waste. They throw out a lot of food that they cannot sell during the day. And I worked with Diz on some of these food security products at Postmates. One simple thing that we built was a button for these restaurant owners to actually push at the end of the day. And when they push that button, a courier would just show up at the restaurant, pick up all the leftover food, and donate it to a food bank or a nonprofit that was near them. And with this program, we kind of salvaged like 300,000 pounds of food over like 1 year or so. So that's our working history, and we built another product which also won an award. So two of us have built products that have actually been successful, been awarded things, and all of that. So why Liquidonate is because I think this has kind of been doing this something similar to food salvaging with other kinds of waste as well. For example, I think what she's told me is she's helped donate a lot of office supplies to nonprofits. Like people would just come up to her and say, I have these chairs and I don't know what to do with it. And she would just find a nonprofit. So, I mean, the two of us decided we should just extend our food waste product to something outside of food and try to make more money, and which is why we're doing this now.
So, Chai, is this donation as a service? Because that's what it sounds like.
It is donation as a service. The reason why tech is the best reason to do whatever we're trying to solve is because if you take it like a large retailer like Target or Walmart or anybody else, the volume of items that they sell is in millions. And this quote just said like 16% is like the average retail returns reported by National Retail Federation. So 16% will come up to like say hundreds of thousands of items, and it's not something which a human can actually sit and find a nonprofit for, and it's just like it's tedious and time consuming if it's done manually. So it is a tech product which is donation as a service, and this problem is something that has to be solved using tech.
So, Des, if I could bring you back into the conversation here for a moment. Um, Walk us through how the platform actually comes together, because it seems to me if this is donation as a service, are you targeting like the Shopify retailer solopreneur type business, or is this like the big mass mart, Best Buy type customer for you guys, or is it all of the above? Like, where's the sweet spot? Where are you trying to make the greatest difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And based on my background, I've always worked in, I've spent time working in nonprofits, volunteering at nonprofits, being a community activist since I was 16. And so for me, we are not going to build a product that only benefits large retail stores. So it is all of the above. So we're building solutions that'll work for small businesses that are extremely affordable options for them to have a social impact or a sustainability strategy using donation as a service. We're doing that for those smaller businesses in addition to the large retail stores. So the enterprise accounts like, the Targets of the Best Buys of the world, like you mentioned, those are the ones that we're targeting as well. So our product is really a POS API that allows integration directly with the point of sale at these retail stores. So whether that is a custom integration that we're building with the store directly, or if it is a Shopify plugin for the vendors that are using the Shopify POS or other similar ones, we're supporting both of those solutions at a price point that still is saving them at least half on their costs for returns.
And you mentioned the word sustainability strategy. It seems to me like this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs, e-commerce retailers just don't think about. How do they, I'm caring about margin, profit, cost of acquisition, reducing my churn, getting repeat customers, lifetime value. These are the things that occupy the mind, I would imagine, of an e-commerce retailer. Why is there such a gap from that mindset to where you guys are playing, which is saying, hey, you can do all that stuff, but with us, Liquid Donate, we'll actually give you a platform that integrates with your point of sale so that you can actually start to develop a sustainability strategy. Why is there gaps, there? Why aren't retailers thinking about sustainability strategies as much as they should be?
I mean, I would argue that a lot of the retailers that we talk to are thinking about it. It's just not affordable for them right now. There's a lot of small businesses and people in, our generation and Gen Z that are requiring companies to be thinking about sustainability as part of their business model and only supporting and shopping at places that actually are doing something on the sustainability front. So for the large retail stores, they're definitely thinking about it. They're doing ESG reporting, social impact reporting, releasing these reports publicly as they're being required to do. And right now, there's a lot of, we'll figure it out. We're figuring it out. We're trying. And that's great. And we want to plug in to that to make it really easy and seamless for them to do that. And then for the small businesses, I mean, everyone wants to do right, like for the most part. And being able to have a solution. I mean, right now, our product starts as low as $25 a month. For a small business, which most small businesses are able to take on a cost that is that price versus something that's going to be significantly more expensive, doesn't actually move the goods, and our product is able to also save them money. So we're trying to hit both sides of the market, right? So we actually are reducing the operational cost for the retail store while also helping them make those donations to nonprofits, which is increasing the amount of sustainable social impact that they're having and decreasing the amount of items going to landfill.
Mm-hmm. Good to hear that this is actually a P1 agenda, and so it's interesting. I find like there's a lot of lip service with things like carbon credits, also a sustainability topic. And there was that show with John Oliver when he covered this, and there was like I think it was like the CEO of like United Airlines or something, and he was like, dude, this is complete BS. Like, no one gives, this is lip service to sustainability. So it's refreshing to hear that this is actually not the reality necessarily in retail.
I mean, I hate greenwashing, which is, what it's called, but at the same time, I have to respect the fact that the lip service is even happening at this point in time, because that means that the next step is actually action.
Yeah, absolutely.
When no one is talking about it, that's the scary part.
I know, but why? This is the thing. Like, don't you think it's so weird, right? Like, it's like everyone wants to, is like, it is greenwashing. It's like we want to buy things that are sustainable, they're organic, like, they helped emerging, sourced only from, emerging market farmers where we collaborate. It's like, okay, yeah, dude, but like you haven't paid that guy a single dollar.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big, huge problem that we're only taking a chunk of. Like when we're thinking about bringing things back into the circular economy, like how do we actually take the items that are still perfectly good, keep them out of the landfill and move them to people who need it? The other thing that I think is interesting to bring up based on what you just said is through the work that I did at Postmates on disaster relief, when there was all the wildfires in Northern California, is kind of when we started doing disaster relief, like last mile delivery for Postmates, is nonprofits often end up getting items that they don't need. And people think that they're being helpful by, taking X, Y, and Z items after a disaster, but it actually can cause more damage to the nonprofit than good. And so one of the important things that we were building into our ecosystem with Liquid Donate is that the nonprofits actually have the choice of what it is that they'd like to be notified about and what items they would like to receive. And then they actually actively place the order for those items so that they're only receiving the types of items that are actually going to be helpful. Because when you're in a volunteer situation or a disaster relief situation and you get a box of, you get 40 gallons of water and maybe you don't need 40 gallons of water, now you have to move the water. You have to have volunteers who go find storage for that, because it's not something that you can throw away. But now it's taking time away from the act of actually caring for the folks that are standing right in front of you in that moment. So that we don't want to continue to like just give people a place to dump off their donations where they think that it's going to make them feel better about the situation and that they're helping, right? We actually want it to be legitimately supporting the nonprofit.
Mm. Yeah, and this matching process has got to be a really critical enabler of that, right? To your point, like you don't want to have things being sent to nonprofits that aren't actually in need. So I'd love to bring Chai back into the conversation as the CTO. Chai, how does the matching engine actually work? So we know it integrates with the point of sale, so you can track, okay, here's all the products that were moved, all the SKUs that were moved. How does the matching process actually work with a nonprofit, for example?
So, so for our matching algorithm, we take a few different attributes of the product into account when deciding which nonprofit it needs to go into. At a minimum, we need to know the specification of the item, like say brand, size, color, make, I mean, damage, condition, all of that, and even the geographic location of where the item is located. And once we know that, we can find a nonprofit that's locally available that needs this item. And how we achieve that is by building the largest database of nonprofits in USA right now. When we onboard nonprofits onto our platform, we gather all their requirements as well, like what category of items they're looking for, in what quantities they need it, and how often they need it, if it's a frequency based kind of a thing. And that information allows us to find the right nonprofit for that item. And that is how we ensure that a nonprofit does not end up with more items than they require, or they don't end up with items that they don't require at all.
Mm-hmm. And Chai, are you working with things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to match products against needs at scale? Is that part of the product infrastructure?
Our current version of the product does not have any artificial intelligence or machine learning involved in it, because the scale that we are operating right now is small enough that we can do this the manual, I wouldn't say manual way, the non-artificial intelligent. We don't need to use any of that to do the matching right now. But I do foresee us using that to predict what is like the number of items that needs to go a nonprofit in the future, and maybe account for that kind of an inflow coming in from retailers in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Chai, what real world examples, in terms of like what you guys are doing for Donate and retailers? Is there a pilot that you guys are currently running, and what kind of results are you guys achieving there?
Yeah, we are running a pilot with Restoration Hardware. I assume you're familiar with it. It's a large furniture retail store in the US. They have like 36 outlets. This pilot's running in California, where we have managed to successfully donate all the items that they cannot sell to nonprofits locally in California. And with this, we've managed to save them some money as well, because every item that they've donated gets a tax donation receipt, which they can use for tax deduction purposes. In addition to that, we are piloting it with another local supplier that makes office supplies, and we managed to donate pencils from them to local nonprofits as well.
Amazing stuff. What's your vision here? I mean, what are you trying to um, see as an outcome, as a result of Liquid Donate being in market and at scale? What does the world look like at the end?
Yeah, there's two things. One is extreme landfill diversion, making sure that these items are no longer ending up in the landfill. These usable items, we can't keep dumping them into the landfill. And then the second one is to change the way that people think about secondhand items. I think right now, the one of the reasons why nonprofits are really our clients who are the ones receiving these goods is because they're open-minded to taking in these items that are still in perfectly good condition and figuring out what to do with them from there. Whereas there are a lot of traditional consumers who refuse to buy a used good. I mean, this is why we have secondary markets for ugly produce, like the produce that's perfectly good, but some folks just are not interested in eating it. I think we really need to do some work on changing the way that people think about, um, you know, secondhand goods in general, not just teenagers who want to go thrifting or hipsters, which I'm all about. But but also general everyday consumers, and what the economy could look like if we were to be more more giving and more compassionate and more thoughtful about all the products that we use and that we buy and that we give away.
So on your point around influence and convincing, retailers that this is the best way to, or this is the new way to do things, how are you overcoming that struggle? Because it seems to me that as humans, we love to talk about change, but really, if it's going to, change my world, I prefer to talk about it than actually change. There's a reason why we don't all run around with six packs. So,
hey, speak for yourself.
well, ripped, buddy, ripped. But how do you like influence and drive this change? I mean, it's like you build this amazing product, you do the right matching, you integrate at the point of sale, you build the tech around the problem, and now you've got to get retailers to change the way that they manage this process.
Well, there's two things. One, we lead with the idea that we're saving the retail store money. I think the first rule of business school, right, is that you have to make sure that it's compelling to the client that you're selling to. And the fact that we've really uncovered a way that we can save on the operational cost while reducing what's going to the landfill is something that most people will not disagree with. If there's something you can come in and say, hey, I'm going to help you with your branding. I'm going to help you with your landfill diversion. You're improving your ESG scores, improving your storytelling for customers. And we're actually going to save you cold hard cash. Like, great. Like a lot of retail stores are in just by having that initial conversation around saving on the operational cost. And then I think the second thing is that a lot of retail stores have seen the data on Gen Z and where they're choosing to buy from and who they're choosing to buy from, and knowing that trend is not going in the opposite direction. Like they have to, like it'll eventually be table stakes for companies to have these types of programs, unless and then customers won't shop there otherwise.
Can you double click on that for our audience who maybe don't even know what Gen Z actually is, or who is that? Because there's like millennials, now there's Gen Z. And what does the data actually say about the way that they are now choosing to procure goods and services from retailers? What is the data saying about the shift in consumer behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, Chai, if you can pull the numbers up that we have, I don't want to give the wrong information, but it's a majority of millennials, or I'm sorry, of Gen Z. So Gen Z is the next generation. So I'm 33, and Gen Z, I think, is teens who are up to
Yeah, exactly.
30.
See, this is the thing. So there's all these labels. Like, let me just have a look here. Gen Z.
It's the next generation.
Gen Z age range. Here you go. Gen Z is anyone born from 1997 to 2012.
Wow. Yeah.
There you go.
It's amazing.
Right? You heard it here first, people. We're all trying to catch up with consumer classifications.
Yeah. And then the millennials, which is, I can take a look at what that is, but it's definitely people who are my age. We also are moving more towards wanting to only purchase from companies that have sustainable missions. I mean, it's the same thing with tech, right? When you think about the conversation of, Uber versus Lyft, which one is going to have a better opinion by the customer base that's going to be using them? Which companies are going to win in the space when there's two competing products? But one has, a social strategy like Tom's shoes versus another company. I mean, I I am grateful to say that I see that shift in consumer behavior in general. But um, Chai, do you have the numbers to prove it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's surprisingly, it's our generation that's more likely to buy from a retail brand that is using sustainable fibers. I mean, if it's clothing or following sustainable practices. So, I mean, we don't even have to wait for the next generation. It's our generation that's actually more interested in working with retail brands that are more sustainable.
Hmm. So, Chai, are you Gen Z?
Yes.
Okay.
No, sorry, I'm not Gen Z. I'm 31. So,
Dude, I don't even qualify for Gen Z or millennial. I'm like 2 years before the start of
Uh,
millennial. Shows you how
wow.
old I am.
I mean, it takes all kinds. I mean, I think the fact that you host a show like this and are talking to people who are doing innovative things that are focusing on climate change or sustainability or even just like ways that people like mobility, how people move around different cities, like all of those things are changing and they're changing quickly. And I think it's important just to cover them. And it's definitely not just our generation. I mean, I'd be remiss to say that my parents and their friends and like they and the investors in our company, I mean, they're not necessarily millennials or Gen Z, and they still see the value in this. So it's not just a subset of people, but the idea of it becoming more table stakes is definitely in the future.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I speak to founders every day, and the amount of technology and innovation that's going into sustainable stuff, like even just in landfills, like think
Yeah.
about smart garbage trucks or computer vision that can track like literally the products in the landfill all the way back to where it was sold and give you a complete supply chain transparency, data, and insights on the journey that that product went on. I mean, like that's
Amazing.
it's ridiculous, right? It's crazy. And a lot of in e-commerce, reducing returns, better management of returns, like what you guys are doing. So it's amazing to see as a community of entrepreneurs and founders how visionaries are changing the way that we do things, ultimately creating a world that's more sustainable for everyone.
yeah, looking at this from the retailer perspective about why they should be using some solution like ours, I mean, I can give you some numbers about how why it makes sense for them. Like we did case studies for a few different retailers, and the average that we arrived in savings that we can offer them is like 95%. So they probably spend like millions of dollars on returns and overstock inventory right now. And with our donation program and with our logistic cost saving, they can save up to 95% of what they're spending today. And we have data to back that up. Like any item that actually gets donated on a platform, we have the data to show which nonprofit it went to. So that's a huge motivation for retailers to actually work with us, even on water, even if on a small scale or on a large scale, large enterprises or small to medium sized businesses.
Hmm. Chai, sticking with you for a moment, it sounds to me like what you guys have done is you've actually built your tech stack around the problem. So, really listened to users, looked at what the needs are at nonprofits, looked at the costs, to your point around the data around retailers, and you've built a business case. And, like as an example, that's reduced this cost, by up to 95%. This is a hard thing to do, right? I think to build a business around a problem takes patience, perseverance, a lot of effort, and a lot of listening. What's your advice, or what have you learned about the process of building a technology platform or a marketplace like what you guys have built? So obviously, supply and buy side, hard thing to do to customers essentially. What's your advice, or what have you learned about building a two-sided marketplace as a tech founder?
So maybe I'll talk a little bit about how we went about building tech for this specific problem and how we approached it. So we initially first thought of a solution for this. The solution was we take all the excess things from retailers and donate it to nonprofits. And in my experience, the technology comes at the very end. So first, we wanted to make sure that the problem we're trying to solve with the solution that we have can does it work in real life. And we did that by running pilots with a few different retailers where everything was kind of manual. And once we knew that it actually works and it made sense, then we started building the tech in iteratively small pieces. So, I mean, if I had to like now concise all of that into just about what my advice would be for building this kind of tech, it would be to start small with something manual, understand what works, and then build the tech around it. Because if you build like full blown tech and nobody's going to use it and it doesn't make sense for your retailers or the nonprofits, you basically just wasted a lot of time. So our approach was to go small and then build the tech around what we know works.
So just to repeat back that, so you basically look for a use case first, right? And then looked at building the tech around one use case and then added more use cases on your roadmap to ensure you eventually get to a stage where you can start to scale. Is that a good, pretty much what you said, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
that puts it exactly the way we did it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? It's like, how do you choose the right use case? Because there's a lot of use cases, right? Especially in a double-sided marketplace. So, how did you, or what's your advice around choosing the right use case? Because it's like, it's a case of evaluating, well, we could go left, we could go right, we could zig, we could zag.
Yeah, so that has been a more of a very explorative process for us, and we've arrived at what we are gonna. We've arrived at our tech product today based on a lot of conversations that we have had with different retailers and nonprofits. Like we had an idea, and we started talking about this idea with different people, and each time we spoke about it, it evolved into something better. And that's how our we added more features and functionality into our platform. So I guess the way we went about making sure we handle all these use cases is just by having multiple conversations with people, whether or not they're in the retail or nonprofit space, just talking about it to anyone who's worked in software or tech or in the nonprofit space, made this idea better than what it was before when we started.
Diz, I'd love to bring you back into the conversation and talk more about the journey that you guys have been on. So, I want to have a bit of fun with you guys. So, I'm going to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine. Okay, right. So here we go. So you have the keys. I want you to go back, both of you, to day one, right? And you're sitting across the table from each other.
Well, it was COVID, so we weren't, but
Okay, but fine. You're doing the Gen Z thing, damn it. Um, but or the millennial thing, who knows? Okay, but anyway, point being, day one, you're looking at each other across the table and on a Zoom call. What advice would you give Chai about building this business?
so I started working on this full time in November. And the first thing I did was I built a pitch deck around the idea of what I wanted to build. And I then had to convince Chai to join me. So that was really the first meeting we had, was me pitching Chai what this business was that I wanted him to build with me, because we'd had such great rapport and great luck and like passion for building the different products that we'd built at Postmates together. So I knew he was my ideal co-founder. So that was the first challenge, and my first piece of advice was like, Chai, you should join me and you should do this, because this is going to be really impactful and it's going to be successful, and it's going to be something that we'll love working on for at least the next 10 years, if not longer. So that was the first conversation. That was back in November of last year, of 2021. And then in February, I finally convinced him. And so he joined in February of this year of 2022, and then was working on the product full time with me. And at that point, I would say my advice to him when he decided to really take the plunge was to trust in the process and trust that we would end up where we are today. I feel very grateful that we are at a place with our product where we've done a lot of the soul searching, the MVP building, a lot of the testing, and that has led us to a place where we're actually able to have a functioning and sellable product less than a year after starting our company, which is, obviously something I'm really proud of. And Chai just like being there to help with the different conversations we had, different opinions, pivoting. Like we did try a few different business models, which I would recommend everybody does, even if you think it's a little bit far outside of your wheelhouse. You never know like what is actually going to take off, and pay attention to what actually people are willing to pay for. And so yeah, my advice would be to just like have trusted in the process, which, I think we both did, and held each other accountable at multiple points throughout the conversation. Which is this whole business is just one long conversation and one long journey.
Exactly. Chai, over to you. What's your day one time machine? You there? Give give Diz advice about building this company. What would that be?
I think I will probably just be repeating myself, but I mean, I think the advice that I kind of was telling Des in the initial few days is, have you talked to people? Do you know if this is something we should be building? Who did you speak to? I mean, that was all that I was asking her in the initial few days of me deciding to become full time with Liquid on 8. Like, I was mostly concerned about validating our solution and validating that our problem is genuine and we're not building something in the void which nobody wants. So it was so yeah. Long story short, my advice was talk to people and find out if this is a genuine problem.
Yeah, you got to have a problem that you got to solve, right? And I think just to maybe double click on something you said, Does, about you were, trying to figure out different business models. And I think I've actually got Steve Blank coming on the show later
Oh,
tonight.
cool.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
so you literally wrote the book on this. Like literally. Well, he wrote several books
Literally.
on this. Yeah. You should check it out. It's going to be tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Cool.
Yeah, man, let's check it out. So, by the way, if you want to ask him a question, you must just let me know. We'll do this after the show. But I mean, let's talk about different business models, because I think it's I know what he's going to say. He'll say something like, "Listen, the purpose of a startup is to figure out a repeatable, profitable business model. That's the only purpose. So there's a lot of testing, there's a lot of customer conversations, there's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of trial and error and this kind of thing." What did you guys do to figure out the right business model? Was it purely a case of like conversational stuff? And I'm very curious, Diz, to get your question, to get an answer from you on this one. How much did your intuition as a team, right, play a role in figuring out the right business model?
The intuition played a role, but it also was important to keep my intuition almost to myself, so that we weren't biasing the conversations that we were having and the MVP, the minimum viable products that we were putting in front of folks that we were getting feedback from. So my intuition was, hey, I know there's this problem. I know that this could be a good solution for it, but will anyone actually use it? I don't know. And so that's what we had to figure out, and we had to leave our egos at the door. I mean, the original thing that I had even pitched for Liquid Donate was not about retail stores. So it was about tech companies having extra technology lying around from doing testing on iPhones, iPads, laptops, Mac, PC, different versions, so that they could see, their engineering team could see like what it was displaying as. And then they use that iPhone for 20 minutes, they put it in a drawer somewhere, and it never sees the light of day again, right? And so that was the original idea, was there's all this technology sitting around at for-profit businesses. What can we do to route it directly to nonprofits? And so that's how the whole conversation started. And we had a number of businesses say, yeah, please just come get everything out of my weird closet. And so it worked, but they weren't necessarily willing to pay us for it, because it was they saw that as a pure donation, and we weren't really saving them any money by doing it. And so that's when we had to start working through, what did it look like to get someone to pay us, because that's one of the biggest things. I mean, and Steve Blank is like one of the biggest promoters of this, right? It's like, people can say that they'll pay you for it, but until someone actually hands you that first dollar and actually pays you for it, you shouldn't believe that they're willing to pay for it. And so that was like the goal, was how do we actually find a product that people are willing to pay for, because otherwise we have no business model.
Isn't it funny? Like I've started 14 startups over the last 25 years. And when it's funny how like when you think you're going to solve that problem over there, you wind up solving a completely different problem
Yeah.
because the market is saying, hey man, the problem's not like what you think it is. It's actually what we need over here.
You have to be open to that too. I mean, I think like that's one of the biggest things that I learned from my time at Postmates is that you always start off thinking you're going to solve X and you end up solving Y. And as long as you're okay with that and you can pivot quickly and you aren't held up to this like idea of what's it called? I can't remember the phrase right now. Sunk cost. Yeah, the sunk cost fallacy. There it is. As long as you're not married to that, then you'll be fine figuring out what it is that you actually should be building for whom and how it should really work. And then yeah, like Chai said, you have to talk to the users. Like you have to talk to the customers. Otherwise, you're just going to build things that end up like weird weird things that no one actually needs, that is just wasting time and money.
Yep, I'm guilty as charged. I've spent millions on products that didn't even, involve customers. They were like, "Look, we know the problem, dude. We're going to build this thing, and it'll work."
And I think that's why there's so many books and so much advice from advisors, right?
Yeah,
On making sure you don't do that because everyone's done it.
exactly, exactly. Um, Chai, let's wrap this up. Diz and Chai. Chai, I'm going to start with you. Why do you do what you do? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I do what I do because I am very passionate about building tech for social impact or sustainability. Like even when I was at Postmates, I was an engineer on the consumer team building something which will make it easier for people to order food on an app. Sure, like I mean, yay, that's a very fancy thing to have. You push a button and somebody delivers food to you. But the reason I got working with Diz was because she was in the social impact and sustainability aspect. And then that was where the real problem was. There were people going hungry and not able to get access to food. And building tech to solve that problem is what I was genuinely interested in. So yeah, every morning when I get up, I'm like, okay, am I writing code to save the world or save someone's, I mean, improve someone's life? Or if it was a genuine problem, yes, then I'm gonna build it. That's
Yeah,
what.
amazing, man, amazing. Diz, why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why do you do what you do?
That's a very loaded question.
Is
So
it? Is it though?
I think I mentioned earlier. So I became an activist when I was 16. I like came out as queer in Orlando, Florida, in high school, and it was not. I mean, it's not a very friendly place for the queer community now, much less back then. And started our school's first like gay straight alliance, and got involved in activism that way, and then started going to college, got involved in environmental issues, animal rights issues, and just started to really lean in that direction of like what can I do to try to help. And it's just like grown over time. I kind of fell into working in tech, and when I was 22 or 23 is when I got hired at Postmates. And so I was pretty young, not really sure what I was doing, but over time I was able to grow my network, my skill set, all of that, and be able to build out our social impact team because I saw there was such a huge opportunity for technology to interact with the nonprofit community and with schools, like with people who actually really needed support. It's like we can build Facebook, why can't we build things that are actually going to make these like life-changing nonprofits have an easier time to meet their mission and their goals. So Bashan and Sean from Postmates, the co-founders, were like generous enough to like let me start the program and grow with it and build all of our social impact work through that. And it's just like we were able to prove that technology is a way that we can improve society, and technology isn't going anywhere. And so with all the things that are coming out, why not
Mm.
work on using it to build things for a positive change?
That's what I love about you guys as a team is the fact that you are making a difference and building a profitable business at the same time. And I think this is the reality now. I find like there's this idea that you have to be capitalistic and self-serving And then, when you make a certain amount of money, 10 million, 100 million, whatever it is, then you become, the contribution angle starts only then to be a reality. But what I'm hearing from you guys is you can do both today. So you can think about, how can your business right now today start making a difference and contributing to your customers in a way that's not just about, driving bottom line profit, or increasing top line margin, but actually making a difference to them and, the customers that they serve in the world around them.
Yeah, I mean, it goes beyond them and it extends to the community. I mean, who doesn't want to live in a community that's more fruitful and more in better poised to handle all of the issues that we're facing in the world today?
Mm-hmm. Diz and Chai, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a privilege having you here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Anytime.
Awesome.
Cheers, Chai. Bye, guys.